Hannah, I forgot to click record again, so I'm recording now. I
Okay.
think, okay, yes. And to kind of recap what Hannah just said, on February 22nd, we have a service date that is optional for members. There's two shifts available. This next bullet is a save the date for AmeriCorps Week, which, as listed below, service opportunities, events, social media highlights, and a service project that weekend. Nationally, AmeriCorps Week is observed the week before this, but we kind of shifted the days that we're observing it because we knew that might conflict with spring break for a lot of y'all, which kind of can, I'm sure y'all have a lot going on in personal lives, and some of your service sites might have stuff planned for that week as well. So we try to make things a bit easier for you guys.
Right. Some service guidelines. I want to mention something because I feel like it's a little underutilized, but it's a really beneficial tool. There's actually a time away form in America Learns. So, as you all know, uh, AmeriCorps is not a job, right? But we still have some similar things to jobs. While you're not submitting like a PTO request or, putting time in for being sick, you would just let us know. In America Learns, there is a form called the leave form, and this should be available to all of you in your account. So when you pull up your account where you'd go to see your quick access to-dos, if you scroll all the way down almost to the bottom. Around there, there's a leave form. And so if you're going to be out for an extended period of time, like you're going to take a vacation or something like that happens, we just ask that you submit that. That helps us keep track of when you'll be out. So when I pull up your timesheet and I see you didn't serve for a week, I'm not freaking out like, oh my gosh, were they sick? What happened? It just helps keep us in the know and helps y'all communicate with us in a more streamlined process. So doing that in America Learns is just helpful. Again, meetings with supervisors. We really leave this up to the members and the supervisor and what's appropriate for how often you all meet, but this should still be regular. So if that's weekly, if that's daily, it should be more than just once a month, but we want y'all touching base with your site supervisor on a regular basis. Timesheets and benchmark, just a reminder on your timesheet, we want you comparing the time you've done with your benchmark found within your position description. Okay, so that last page on position description has your benchmark. In fact, probably towards the end of this month, I'll be just going through checking, making sure that everybody is doing well on hours, because we want to make sure that y'all are successful. And so if you need help catching up, I know I've had a few members who've gotten sick, so we want to help make sure that we can either get you caught up or just troubleshoot and come up with a plan. So just y'all can make sure that you're tracking that a little bit. It helps us out. And then learn about goals that align with your service. This is just, keeping in mind the goals that you have personally, be it professionally or what you want to do in your career, in your retirement, whatever it is, and how that aligns with the service that you're getting to do. And then again, want to reinforce, please check your WT staff email very frequently. Ideally, this should be done daily. But, there have been a couple issues with specifically students who also have staff accounts. So, we take that into account, but um, we're really putting that into place that we want you all checking your staff emails. Okay. If you have any issues accessing them or anything like that, please reach out to me. I'll do the best that I can. At the end of the day, there are some things that just I can't do and IT has to take care of though.
Um, Before we move on to Jessica Hartman's presentation, did y'all have any questions about that? Anything about America Learns or getting access to your email or anything like that? Cool. Okay. Send a message in the chat if you do. And Jessica will let you take the wheel. She
And
just sent in a pre-quiz link, so please take that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and she can share hers.
fantastic, thank you. So yeah, so like Sophia said, I just put a link in the chat. So if you will go ahead and go to that link, it's a little pre-quiz. Don't worry, there's no grades, there's no wrong answers. Um, but that just helps me know where we're at and what's going on. For a couple of you, it sounds like at least one of the questions, maybe two of the questions won't really be applicable since you just joined not more than a week ago. So obviously just answer them the best that you can. And I am going to share my screen while we work on that, and then I'll introduce myself here in just a second. But I hate the way that's doing that. I don't like that.
Hey, Jessica,
Yeah.
it looks like the pre-quiz link was actually the post-quiz link.
No, 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 don't do that. Don't do the post quiz. Hold
Okay.
on, hold on. Don't do that one. Okay, hold on. Thank you for that. I'm just like you, Sophia. I'm like, which button is it under? Where is the slide? Okay, this is the pre-quiz, right? Copy that link. Find the chat box again. Y'all, I'm not great with this. Chat, there we go. Here's the chat box. Try that one. Is that a different one? That should be the right one. Oh, that is a different link. Okay,
Yes, it says pre-quiz.
fantastic. I had the wrong link pasted or copied, I guess. I was gonna say, let me toast it, make sure. Yeah, there it is. All right, sorry about that, you guys. Okay, I'm sure it doesn't help, but I deleted the accidental post quiz link, but maybe that will prevent people from clicking on it accidentally for a second. Okay. Can everyone still see the PowerPoint slide though? Okay, fantastic. All right. Let me see where we're at. Okay, I have 6 responses on the pre-quiz, so we're getting closer. Oh, 10 responses. Okay, I think we're pretty much to the, what do they call that when you get to critical mass or whatever, where you have most everybody in there? Okay, so let me just look in here and see what kind of questions we have, make sure and see if we're going to cover those today. Although it's exciting, it looks like some of you have gained some knowledge from session 2 and you've used some of it, so that's awesome. That's really exciting. Yes, I love it. Someone looked up the EIN number, checked the tax return for the executive director, see what the executive director made. Yay! It's public information. Go find it. I love it. Talked with your site supervisor about it. I love that. I'm curious to know how that went. Networking with other nonprofits and just understanding what's going on. Yeah, explaining the mission to the public, finding more about nonprofits. So yay! To me, that's a win. That's exciting to hear. And it doesn't look like anyone has any specific questions for today, so let's get rolling. Okay, so like Sophia said, my name is Jessica Hartman, and I'm the Senior Program Officer at the Mary E. Bivens Foundation, for those of you who don't know me. I do know quite a few of you on the call, so that's really exciting to see some familiar names and start to learn who you are and where you're serving. Button up again. Oh, technology. So fun. Okay, so this is part 3. So for those of you who missed out on part 1 and part 2, I'm sorry. I know that there are recordings there, and so maybe that's something you'll wind up going back and watching just to get a good feel. But we've covered a lot in sessions 1 and 2, just in terms of what a nonprofit is, what they can do, how they function, how they're structured, and all of those things. So this is part 3, which is really just kind of the wrapping up what we've talked about in sessions 1 and 2. So for those of you who haven't been here, there may be some gaps. You may kind of look at some things and not quite know what's going on. But if anybody has a question, feel free to either put it in the chat or interrupt me. I am not a formal presenter in this capacity, so just feel free to jump in and go, wait, I don't understand that. Explain it more, or how does that work? Either through the chat or by unmuting yourself and jumping in. So there we go. You already did the quiz. So the first thing we're going to talk about is nonprofit sustainability. Is that a phrase that you have heard before? I'm looking for head nods or head shakes or yeses or nos. Has anybody heard the phrase nonprofit sustainability before? I see a couple yeses. I see a couple nos. So that's good. We'll talk a little bit about that today, and you should know what that is. So nonprofit sustainability is kind of a buzzword. So people use it a lot. And it's one of those buzzwords that, depending upon who's using it and how they're using it, they could mean different things. So it's always helpful to kind of clarify what they mean. But in general, when we're talking about nonprofit sustainability, so the definition of sustainable, right, is capable of being sustained, which really doesn't tell you much, because I feel like that breaks the rules of defining 101, right? You can't use the word in the definition, and that's basically the same word. So sustained means to maintain at length without interruption or weakening, right? So something like is continuous. When you think of like a process or something, right? It's not something that's dying downhill or something that's growing. It's just sustained, like it's going to keep going, right? So according to the Council of Nonprofits, which if you're unfamiliar with the Council of Nonprofits, is a really fantastic resource that gives an overview for a lot of different things related to nonprofits, of course. If you have a question about something in nonprofits, you could probably look it up at Council of Nonprofits and find something there that would direct you. But they define sustainability as for charitable nonprofits, the phrase sustainability is commonly used to describe a nonprofit that's able to sustain itself over the long term, perpetuating its ability to fulfill its mission. And so I just think this is important to talk about, because I think we all want our nonprofits to be sustainable, right? Like we want the nonprofits that you're working at right now to still be around in a year, and still be around in 5 years, and still be around in 10 years, unless you're able to solve whatever issue that you're working on, which, right, is our hope. But realistically, we want you to be able to continue doing the good work that you're doing. And that's what sustainability is. And so if you've ever read the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, or heard anything about that mentality or that model, you'll be familiar with the flywheel. And it's related to businesses, really, not nonprofits, but there's a nonprofit version of Good to Great. And it's related to businesses and how, like, when you start out, things are hard, right? And they're difficult and they're time consuming. And as you gain momentum, once you have things in place, it kind of build itself, and you don't have to push it as much. You know, when you think about a snowball, right? When you start building a snowman, you have to start small, and you build it and you build it. And there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of hand holding and guiding and directing and movement and force, right? And then once you get a big one, if you push it down a hill, it's just going to keep going on its own and get bigger and bigger and build on its own, right? It's that same idea. And so regarding like capacity building, regarding sustainability, there's this idea of the nonprofit capacity flywheel. And so you can see, I'm not really going to go into details on this. And for those of you who haven't been before on one of my little talks, sometimes I don't go far in depth in something. I'm really just introducing something to you, so that, like, if this is a concept that you want to go learn more about because it relates to what you're doing at your nonprofit, you have the resources and the ability to go look into that and find more information out about it. Because you could probably do a whole half day on this idea, right? And so there's organizational elements that are connected to key stakeholders. And so with this idea of sustainability, like if you have impact and you've built your brand and you find your revenue sources and you have your operations solid, and then you have this governance that comes in and this culture that's an oversight for it, right? And it's wrapped around with your stakeholders, donors, employees, clients, and customers, right? Like you build that flywheel, like the momentum of it will continue to go on its own. Does that kind of make sense? And that's what we want, right? We don't want to get started and then stop, and then get started and then stop, or get started with a snowball and then it fall apart and us have to start all over with another snowball that then falls apart and we have to start all over, right? You don't gain momentum in doing that. And so that's kind of the idea behind sustainability. If you can get those things in place, if you can get things rolling, the nonprofit will more smoothly operate and keep going. Does that make sense? Kind of? Yeah, good. Now, there's a new idea in the nonprofit sector, and this is very, very new, is this idea of durability, right? And so I have some counterparts at other foundations who are saying sustainability is really not what we mean and what we're looking for when we look at funding different nonprofits. We're actually looking at durability, even though we've coined it sustainability. And so to durable means to last a long time. It comes from a Latin verb. I can't say that word because I don't speak Latin, but it means to last, right? And so synonyms for durable are lasting. So that implies a capacity to continue indefinitely, right? Permanent, which adds usually the implication of being designed or planned to stand or continue indefinitely or forever. And then stable, which implies lastingness because of resistance to being overturned or displaced, right? We want to build nonprofits that are durable, right? We want things that are happening forever, right? And so critical elements of that durability are things like relationship building, co-creation of things, an ownership mindset, right? Not, oh, that's their problem. Like, no, it's our problem. We own this. Let's figure it out. Cultivating future leadership. At one point in time, I think it was the first maybe session, we talked a little bit about like how you can, founders of nonprofits sometimes have a hard time letting go and moving on to the next leader. Well, that's not sustainable, right? If you are the sole person who runs this organization and you're the only one that knows how to do it, it's not sustainable. It's just going to end when you end. And whether that be you retire or another kind of end, I don't mean like, but you know what I mean? Like if you don't cultivate that next leaders, then your nonprofit is not sustainable, not durable, right? Your organization needs to be nimble and flexible enough to change forward. If you've ever heard that word, right? Not fall back and not just change, but change forward into things. And you need to be in a constant state of learning. And those are all kind of some of those elements that will make sure an organization is durable or sustainable or whatever buzzword we're going to use. That just means it's going to continue doing the good work, right? So that leads us into capacity. And so I'm excited that Sophia put in the chat, I hope y'all guys are watching that, but she said nonprofit sustainability is something you all contribute to. And she is correct. That's one of the reasons we're talking about this, right? Each of the roles have an aspect of capacity building. So we're about to talk about capacity building that's helping to add or support the partner sites to build resiliency and overall sustainability. Oh, see, resiliency is another word we could use there too, right? Like there's a lot of buzzwords we could probably plug in that just really mean we want organizations to be strong and long-standing, right? So capacity, in my opinion, is a little bit of another word for sustainability or durability or resiliency. Like they're all in the same vein. But let's talk a little bit about nonprofit capacity specifically. So what is capacity? So capacity is another word for organizational capability and competence, maybe. So again, all in the same vein, just kind of buzzwords. But capacity are the things that support the organization's mission and programs. These are things like the management of the organization, governance of the organization, the business model, administrative services, things like policies, right? And much more contribute to the nonprofit organization's capacity, right? So when I think of capacity for an organization, this is kind of a visual that really represents what I envision, right? So if we look at the top of that, we have the mission, right? Which should always be the forefront of any nonprofit organization's everything, right? The mission is the reason you're doing what you're doing. It's always the North Star, right? So the mission there is on the top, right? And if you look and think of this like as a table, and there are so many different situations or circumstances that use a table as a graphic, right? A representation of something. But you can see the programs are the table, right? The top of the table. And if you don't have good and strong programs, you're not going to meet your mission, right? And so that is how you meet your mission. And then you can see some of our table legs there, right? So you can see a management table leg. You can see a governance table leg, a business model table leg. And there's all sorts of different words that people use for all these different things, right? Administrative systems. If your table legs are strong and stable and your programs are strong and stable, then you're going to be able to meet your mission, right? But if you'll think through a couple scenarios with me really quick, right? So on the very far left, you see, like, if your business model for your nonprofit is just not there, not strong, you don't have one, you haven't thought it through, it's not in existence, it's not there. Is your table going to be, is your table going to stand? Maybe, right? Like, we've seen three-legged table, you know, four corners. It'll kind of stand. It might be a little bit wobbly, right? And if you lean too much onto one side, it's going to tip over. But you might be okay in general, but it's not going to be what it could be if you had that fourth leg, right? It's not going to be stable. It's not going to be sustainable, durable, as if you have all of them. You look at the mission in the middle one right there, right? If your governance and your management are not there at all, right? You just don't have those things in place, you're not going to meet your mission, right? Because you can't, your table's not going to stand, right? You can't effectively meet your mission if the table's not there, right? Everyone following? I'm such a visual person that these make sense to me. And then you can look on the very far right, you can see I just kind of put a red line there, but like, if all of those things are, maybe I'm going to use the word immature, you know, if they're not fully developed, if they're just kind of there but not well, you're not going to be able to meet your mission as well as if those things were stronger or more robust. Does that make sense? Yes, I'm seeing some shakes head. Thank you. That helps me a lot. I require feedback. I need to know where we're at. So when you think of those things, of those table legs, those are all capacity for an organization, right? That those table legs equal capacity. And so let's talk about more specifically, and you know, management, governance, business model. Let's talk more specifically about what those things might mean and what those do, because those are just kind of the overarching terminologies, right? So some elements of capacity, right? We can start with governance. So bylaws and policies. So if your organization has established clear guidelines for operations, decision-making, and conflict resolution, that's a strong table leg there, right? But if you don't have your bylaws and policies outlined, that's a weak table leg, right? Or not as strong as it could be. Board development is another thing that falls under governance. And so this is recruiting a diverse and engaged board with relevant expertise and experience in fundraising, legal matters, program development, maybe financial understanding, whatever your organization needs from board members, right? It's having that robust board and training them, developing them, making sure that they know what they're doing. Legal compliance also falls under governance. So this is ensuring your proper registration with the government, adherence to regulations, depending upon whatever field you're in. It's making sure you're abiding by those, right? So then under financial sustainability, right, we have this idea of budgeting and forecasting, right? And I don't know if you can think about this, but if you think about a nonprofit that's just getting started, do they have a budget yet? Probably not, right? They're getting started, they're growing. Getting a budget in place is one of those things they need to start building their legs, right? So budgeting and forecasting. So creating a detailed budget with realistic revenue projections and cost management strategies. It's a huge part of capacity. Diversification of funding sources, exploring grants, individual donations, corporate sponsorships, earned income opportunities, right? If you have one source of funding, your one leg is probably not very strong, right? That piece of capacity is not very strong. Financial management systems, right? So implementing an accounting software to track income and expenses effectively. Again, if you think of a brand new nonprofit, most of the ones I see just track their income and expenses on their bank statement, which is okay when you're first getting started. But if you're going to more effectively meet your mission and grow your capacity to do so, you're going to have to grow in this area as well, right? And build those financial systems in place. Because I promise you, places like Cal Farley's Boys Ranch don't operate their, financial management with bank account statements, right? Like they've grown and they've grown the financial management systems along with that. Program development is another area, the tabletop needs assessment. So this is conducting thorough research to identify the community's critical needs and target populations. And when I think of needs assessment, we often think of like beginning, and that can be a beginning thing, but you can do needs assessments as you go. It can be continual. Program design, crafting well-defined programs with clear objectives, measurable outcomes, and implementation plans. And then an evaluation framework, right? Establishing methods to monitor and assess program effectiveness. So I know Janae and I have talked quite a bit. We started a brand new program. We started the Bivens Market, and it was brand new. And we didn't have the program design in place. We didn't have the evaluation framework in place, right? When Janae came on board, I feel like we pretty much had the program design narrowed down, but we hadn't written it down anywhere, right? And so being able to put that program design in place and creating that evaluation framework to determine how we're going to make sure our program continues to be a strong tabletop. That's part of capacity building. Human resource development. We talked last time about how human resources are one of the most valuable and critical components to a nonprofit's effectiveness, right? So recruiting staff, hiring qualified staff with the necessary skills and experience for key roles. I think about, depending upon which field you're in, but we'll pick on Calvin for a second, right? Community garden, right? If you don't know anything about gardening, you either have to learn or find someone who knows something about gardening, right? Like, you want someone who's equipped to be able to do what you're hiring them to do. I promise you wouldn't want to hire me as someone to manage a garden. I don't know what I'm doing. Now, that's not to say someone couldn't learn, but you want to make sure you have people with necessary skills and experience for the roles that you're putting them in. Training and professional development. So that's, the ongoing training to enhance staff capabilities and program delivery, fundraising, and administrative tasks, right? So maybe Calvin knows about the gardening, but you know what he really needs to learn about? He really needs to learn about how to water it better and what the ideas and the techniques are that are used for watering the garden, right? Send him to professional development, train him in some of the ways that you can water gardens so that he can come back and do his job more effectively, right? Invest in that, builds the capacity for the organization. That's just one example. Volunteer management, recruiting, training, and engaging volunteers to support program activities. I think if I'm correct, there are some, maybe it was last year or maybe it's this year, building a volunteer manual, right? Like, what are the expectations that we have of volunteers? How do we get them in? What are their roles and responsibilities? What do we expect them to do? All of that, and building that volunteer management, that's capacity building. If you don't have that in place, it's not that you're not utilizing volunteers, but you could be doing a better job, right? Building that capacity, building that volunteer base. Make sense? Are we tracking? I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys. Operational efficiency, another element of capacity. So this is things like adopting technology, utilizing the technology tools to streamline operations, manage data, and improve communication. Marketing and communications. I think there's at least one marketing and communication AmeriCorps member this year, right? So developing a clear brand identity and effective communication strategies to reach target audiences, that's all a part of building capacity. I know a lot of nonprofits, especially someone new, will start working there and they'll go, I talked to all these people and no one's ever heard of us. They don't know we're here. How do they not know we're here? Well, marketing communications, right? Building that part of your organization to be stronger. And then data management, establishing systems to collect, analyze, and report data to inform decision making. And that can just be operational, organizational wide, or it can be for certain different things. And that's probably not comprehensive, if I'm being honest, right? Like, those are just some places that organizations have quote unquote capacity. Is that fair? Okay. I'm going to kind of look at Sophia and Hannah. Do we want to take like a 10-minute break? I know we've taken a break in the past.
I mean, do you feel like this is like the halfway point, or?
This would be a good place for me to
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We're about an hour in, so everybody can stretch their legs, use the bathroom, just take a break from the screen. How long would you like? Maybe like 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah,
We just do a bird, like to be back at 2 o'clock.
Just be back by 2? Yeah, that sounds perfect.
That's beautiful. Awesome.
We'll resume this so it is actually recording.
job to remember, Sophia.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we can still see my PowerPoint slides?
Yes, I
Yes,
can.
ma'am.
Perfect. Still an element of capacity. Okay. Um, so sorry, that was kind of a dry topic, but I hope that helps you understand just kind of all the potential things that could be a part of capacity. So capacity building is kind of, or capacity of an organization, capacity building, again, it kind of depends on what that person's perspective is as to what they're talking about. So unfortunately, often people will go like, oh, the capacity of the organization, and they're just talking about governance. They're not talking about anything else. They're just talking about the one table leg. Or they're talking about management, right? And that's the only table leg they're talking about. And it's a lot more comprehensive than that. So when we talk about capacity, I think the next thing, when we see all the potential things that could go into what creates the capacity of an organization, the next question I think that makes sense that most people ask is, okay, well then how do we measure the capacity of our organization, right? How do we evaluate where the organization's at, which table legs are strong, which are not, and how short or tall they are, how strong the programs are, the tabletop? How do we do all of those things? And so when you assess organization capacity, there's two purposes. One is really it provides a framework that facilitates individual reflections about an organization's trajectory, right? So it helps everyone come together and look at where's this organization headed? Where is it going to go? The second purpose is it really helps all the stakeholders identify what their shared concerns are and what their shared priority actions are. I will just say, like, if you have one person evaluating the capacity of a nonprofit organization, that's going to be limited to their perspective. And when there's many, many people involved in a nonprofit organization, you've got to get more perspectives than just the one to know the true reality of where things stand. And so there are tools that provide common language to discuss difficult organization issues and focuses the conversation on the questions rather than the opinions of specific people, right? So it pretty easily can become heated when you're talking about a nonprofit because one person goes, well, we need to do X, Y, Z. Somebody else goes, we need to do A, B, C. And then you get this X, Y, Z, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, right? And you have this argument, and then you don't actually move the organization forward because you're too busy talking about each other's opinions and arguing about what needs to happen. When you use a tool, it takes the focus off of that and onto the tool to go objectively, where's the organization and what needs worked on. Chances are it's ABC and XYZ, right? They probably both need some attention, but it's really just that tool to help that process. If you are ever in the position of wanting or needing to do some type of organizational assessment, capacity assessment, I would really recommend, I highlighted it because I thought it was really, really good. It's a guide to using organizational capacity assessment tools. And I think it's really comprehensive, but short and succinct. So it kind of walks you through, okay, if you're going to assess the organization, think about these things, include these people, this is the purpose, this is the why, this is how you can do it. And it really gives you a framework for assessing the capacity of a nonprofit organization. So that's a resource there in the PowerPoint slides. I do think, aren't these shared with them some way, somehow they're available that they can have these after, right?
Yes, normally you can send me the PDF of this after and we can send
Okay,
it to our
perfect.
members.
And if I haven't for the first two, I probably should, but it's been like before Christmas and before New Year's since that happened, so I can't remember. But yeah, so there's a link there to that, but it's a guide to using those organizational capacity assessment tools. And so what I'll tell you is there was a study that was done, and back in 2017, they identified 91 different organizational capacity assessment tools that existed at that time. We are in 2025 now. I would imagine there are more than 91, but 48 of those were multi-area assessment tools. So if you think about the different legs of the table, right, they would look at all the different legs in the tabletop. 43 of them were like checklists and resource guides, right, that are a little more informal, but still capacity assessing. And that study did not include any of the single capacity area tools. So if you just want to like look at your board and how strong they are and how strong that table leg is, there are lots of tools out there where you can just look at the board and just look at what you can do there. Same thing with financial management. There's tools that just look at that one component. Leadership, one component, fundraising, one component. Like there's a lot more tools that just do one component at a time. But when you want to look at multi-area assessment and do kind of a comprehensive look, there's at least 48. That's a lot of different tools you can use. And so I feel like some people who are like me, maybe a little bit type A rule followers, I don't know if any of you were on the call, maybe not. but you can get caught up with, I want to make sure and use the right tool. I want to find the right tool and use the right one, use the best one, move forward. So what they found is actually the process is more important than whichever tool you use, right? So the tool is important, don't get me wrong, because it helps make sure you're looking at all the different areas and considering everything, but it's a guide. But the process of doing it is actually more important than using the right tool, okay? And they also found that tools work best in a process facilitated by a skilled consultant. So I don't know if any of you have seen this in your nonprofits or the organizations that you work in. But if it's an internally driven process, sometimes it can be heavily weighted one way, or sometimes only one perspective can be looked at. And when you use an outside skilled consultant, they can walk everybody and all the stakeholders through the whole process. And it's a much, I think, better, more effective way to go about things. They also found that the tools that were most highly regarded were the ones that were adapted or custom designed for the particular organization and its context and needs. So again, the tool is less important than the process and how you're using it, okay? And then a lot of the tools do have rubrics in them that will help you understand how doing better can look like. So there's one we'll talk about here in a second, but it has an area and then it has 4 different descriptions. And I should have shown you an example of it, and maybe I can pull one up real quick. And I'm making this up, but like weak, kind of weak, strong, really strong, right? Like whatever that looks like. And if you see like, hey, we're here, you see the things that are happening in the next level. Those are ideas for how you can move forward and make it stronger and build your capacity in that area. So it has like, this is what it could look like better. We're here and that's not bad, but here's how we could do it better and grow. Does that make sense? Yep, fantastic. Okay, so here are just some of the most familiar organizational capacity assessment tools that are out there. Again, just giving you information, resources that you can go look at later. I would say that probably the most popular one is the McKinsey & Company's Organizational Capacity Assessment Tool, or the OCAT. And I specifically highlighted this one. Hannah, Sophia, you heard of this one before?
Yes, that's what we use.
Yeah, that's exactly, this is the one that AmeriCorps uses. And it is because, in my opinion, it's probably the gold standard when you look at things, right? Like it is the most comprehensive, the most, I don't want to say critical, but looks at the most components, looks at the most pieces, has the most information. And you can even see how the next one, the Marguerite Casey Foundation, they have an organizational capacity assessment tool. And you can see that it is based on the McKinsey OCAT tool with a variation, right? So they're taking that over comprehensive thing, making it a little bit easier to access. There's the TCC Group's Core Capacity Assessment Tool, another good one. Social Venture Partners created an organizational capacity assessment tool. It's named the same thing that the Marguerite Casey Foundation named theirs, but it's different. It's also based on the McKinsey OCAT. There's a pact that they created, the organizational capacity assessment. Like they all have the similar names, but they're all different tools. And again, the process is more important than the tool you select. And then Venture Philanthropy Partners uses that McKinsey capacity assessment grid. If we have time here in a minute, I may pull it up. No, I'm going to pull it up. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Okay, give me a second to share the right screen and then we'll see it. Okay. Share. Okay, for just a second, y'all are going to see everybody that I see. There we go. Okay, can y'all see the McKinsey capacity assessment grid on there? So if you see like this one, for example, is looking at aspirations, right? And so the mission of the organization, you can see, do you have no written mission or limited expression of the reason the organization exists? Lacks clarity or specifically either held by very few organization or rarely referred to. I know at the beginning we talked about one organization that didn't have a mission statement yet. Right there, there's room for growth, right? And it's not that you're in a bad place or a horrible place, but it shows you, hey, if we have some organization, some expression of the reason for existence, it reflects the values and purpose, may lack clarity, held by only a few, lacks broad agreement, versus a moderate, like clear expression of the organization's reasons. Like, I don't know, I'm probably rushing through that a little bit with my words, but you can see how if you identify where you are on that, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you can see how you might go to the next step in your organization's capacity specifically related to mission. right? And then you can look at your vision and see how it is. And you can see if you have a little shared understanding of what your organization aspires to become or achieve beyond the mission statement, right? Well, how could we move forward? How could we move forward? How could we get better? How can we build that capacity, right? And so you could have an organization, and it goes through lots and lots and lots of different areas, right? Here's that strategy is next. Then you have performance management, you have some of your programs related stuff, right? And you can see how an organization may have all ones, right? And that just means their table legs are really short, right? And they need to grow everything and hopefully at a similar rate so that you're growing your capacity. And you may have some that have a lot of fours. And then let's see, what is this one? And then in their planning, they're all down at twos. And so you can see like, oh, that's a really weak table leg. Everything else seems to be strong, but that's where we could really use some work. You may have some that jump around and have fours and twos and ones and fours and threes, right? And then you can it just helps you identify where your organization might need to grow the capacity in general. Does that make sense? Yeah, I see a couple head nods. So again, process is more important than the tool, but tools are out there to help you do that. All right, hold on. Nope, not that. Okay, are we back to PowerPoint, but just not on the right slide?
Yep. Yeah, I see the PowerPoint. Now you're on the OCAT.
Beautiful. Okay. Awesome. So there's lots of assessment tools out there. That's just one that's pretty graphic and easy to see. Here's just some other tools. Again, I know you'll get these PowerPoint slides. So if you're curious, if you want to use them, the Ford Foundation has an open source organizational mapping tool. The United Way has a checklist for nonprofit organization indicators. It's a useful tool. And then there's a nonprofit capacity instrument. But again, 91 different tools that they identified in 2017. So you have your pick of whatever you want that matches your organization that can be used. So that leads us to really our last topic. We still have quite a bit to talk about in this topic area, but this leads us to capacity building. So have we heard that term capacity building before? I feel like everybody should be shaking their heads up and down because you are AmeriCorps members, and that's the whole purpose of your being, right? As an AmeriCorps member, your purpose is to build the capacity of organizations, right? Yes. Okay. So you probably know some of this. I'm probably sharing some things you've already seen, but hopefully there's some new content here, new ideas or new thoughts that we can talk about when we talk about this idea of capacity building. So what is capacity building? I'm leaving some silence because I want you to think through it. And I really do want the answer to this. Tell me what you think capacity building is. Put it in the chat. Tell me out loud something.
I'm going to make note of who's not answering.
I know. Come on. Okay, I'm going to move forward. But Hannah, I want it to be noted that at the end of this, they're all going to be able to explain capacity building. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and so increasing skills is one way to increase capacity. Yep. Increasing their ability to handle tasks. That's another way to increase capacity. So we're hitting some of the like little parts that are a part of capacity building, but in general, here's your definition of capacity building. So everybody screenshot this, write it down, keep it there in your notes. So when Hannah asks you next time, you can pull it out and answer the question. Where is it? Working to serve more clients. That's one way you can build capacity, right? Increasing sustainability. That's probably a good equivalent definition, right? Improve capacity, increase sustainability. Those may be equivalent terms. So capacity building is the process of increasing the nonprofit's ability to fulfill its mission, right? Increasing or improving the nonprofit's ability to fulfill its mission. Anything that does that is considered an activity or a task that's capacity building. If whatever's happening increases their ability to fulfill the mission, it's capacity building, which makes it really complicated, right? Like there's so many different things that make up capacity building. So there's your definition. Has everybody got it written down? Everybody screenshotted it? Everybody saved it for later? Okay, good, good, good. So here's another definition of capacity building. I like to present it different ways because different people learn different ways and understand things in different ways. But anything that strengthens a nonprofit's ability to deliver on its mission over time, thereby enhancing the nonprofit's ability to have a positive impact on lives and communities, right? So if we think of our table, if it's a really short table leg with kind of a small tabletop, you can just barely meet your mission, right? You might be meeting your mission, but you're just barely doing it. And as you grow, anything that strengthens that nonprofit, you're better able to meet your mission over time. Any table leg you're able to shore up or make more solid helps you grow. More programs that are aligned with what you're trying to do, it all increases your ability to deliver your mission. Does that make sense? Okay. So the benefits of nonprofit capacity building. So it enhances your impact, which I think at the end of the day is the one that most people care about, right? We want to make a bigger difference or a better difference or whatever that looks like, more people. It improves the sustainability of the organization, right? So it does increase that sustainability. You'll probably have increased efficiency, which probably means you can serve more people or serve them better, right? You're better adaptable, so the organization's better able to change. I think if there's anything that COVID-19 taught nonprofits is you got to be adaptable, right? You've got to be willing to change and ready to change at a moment's notice and figure it out. So adaptability is important. I'm going to go ahead and say this. There's probably a quote out there somewhere. I should probably find it. But like if your organization is not adaptable, it will not be around for long. Long-term viability, right? And that long-term viability, long-term sustainability, right? Being there forever. That's all a part of things. Capacity building is going to benefit the nonprofit in these ways. So like, how do you create a capacity building strategy? This may be a little bit like beyond what AmeriCorps members are going to be doing because you're not creating the strategy for the capacity building, right? You're coming into the capacity building. But I wanted you to kind of understand this, and I thought this was a great graphic. So you start with a mission. Again, that's your goal, your North Star. The organization should evaluate the needs and resources, get the team involved, right? It can't be an individual process, determine the goals and the timeline, and then invest in the right tools, track your progress as you go, right? It's a process. And I would say that all the AmeriCorps members, I'm going on a limb here, are jumping in at the invest in the right tools, right? The organization that you're working for decided in this process, after they determine their goals and timeline, that an AmeriCorps member is one of the tools that they can invest in that would help them improve their capacity in many different ways, right? And then you're helping track the progress of what you're able to accomplish and how you're able to help that organization's capacity grow. Fair? Okay, awesome. So you guys have given me some examples already of activities that build capacity, right? It wasn't a definition of capacity building, but ideas of things that build capacity. Here's just some other ones. If your organization doesn't have policies, creating those policies and getting them in place, that helps build capacity. Board development, training your board, staff development, or training your staff. Strategic planning, if your organization doesn't have a strategic plan, going through the process of creating a strategic plan in and of itself builds the capacity of the organization. And then having that strategic plan in place helps build the capacity of the organization. I will also just right here make my little soapbox note, but a strategic plan isn't meant to be built and put on a shelf and get dirt on it. A strategic plan is meant to be a living, breathing document. And so you should be, as a part of that strategic planning, reevaluating, adjusting, continuing to refer back to it, and it should help guide the organization as you move forward. Because I would venture to say if you create a strategic plan and went through all that time and stick it on a shelf, you actually didn't build the capacity of the organization. You just wasted people's time. Creating a development plan or a fundraising plan, all activity building, capacity building. If you think of a brand new nonprofit, they probably don't have a fundraising plan. They probably don't have a development plan in place. But as they go, that's one of the things that they're going to need to put in place, again, to build their capacity to be able to meet their mission. Other ideas, professional development opportunities for staff, diversifying fund, networking with other industry professionals. I know sometimes networking isn't necessarily considered a priority, but you are not in a silo, you are in a community, right? And so how do you relate to that community? How does your organization work and function within that community? Purchasing appropriate technology. I have a fantastic example of this. My very first job when I moved back after college was program director at the Maverick Boys and Girls Club. Anybody familiar with the Boys and Girls Club? It's a great, great place. But when I first got there, I would get to my office, turn on my computer, and go find something else to do because it took between 30 to 45 minutes for my computer to start up every morning. And then once I was done cleaning something or finding something to do, I could come back and get work done on my computer. And that was every morning. So when we finally bought a brand new laptop, that built the capacity of the organization because now the appropriate technology was in place that I could get to work and actually just get to work, right? And not wait 30 to 45 minutes spending my time doing something else. So technology can be capacity building. Creating a volunteer recruitment strategy or a volunteer manual or anything related to that. Here's some other ones. Under kind of that volunteer management table leg, coordinating or managing service programs, recruiting volunteers. Under like a training and program development leg, coordinating programs, developing new programs, writing training manuals, organizing or leading training workshops for staff or for people or board members or whomever. Under a fundraising leg, it might be organizing an event. It might be identifying grant and funding sources. It might be writing grants. Communications could be website and social media development, could be coordinating meetings, could be outlining networking support, creating printed marketing materials. I hope you guys are seeing that the reason it's really so hard for people to wrap their minds around capacity building is because it's complex and there's a lot of things that can be considered capacity building, right? So examples of capacity building activities continued under research. So not every organization is going to have a research table leg, right? But if you do, community-based research, policy research, whatever that looks like, collaboration, partnership building, identifying partners and or stakeholders, organizing and facilitating meetings, building and maintaining relationships, all of these things can be capacity building for an organization and more. So I'm going to make this note because this is one of my things that I'm really, I think is very important. When you create your capacity building goals, make sure they're SMART. Has anybody ever heard of SMART objectives or SMART goals? A couple. Okay. So make sure you're very specific about what your objectives are. Make sure you make it measurable so you know whether or not you've achieved your goal. You can refer to like past performance to make sure you're realistic in your goals. Make sure it's relevant. Again, the mission statement of the nonprofit is the North Star. And then make sure it's time bound. Create a timeline and progress and checks in. And I've done a whole training on SMART objectives. And so that's a whole day long thing. But if you can make sure that your goals for capacity building are SMART, then you're more apt to know whether or not you've met them. And again, you've made them achievable, you've made them relevant, you do them in the time frame that you have indicated. So just learn more about SMART objectives and SMART goals and make sure your capacity building things are there. And it looks like Sophia just jumped ahead of me a little bit, and I love that. I do. I love it. It's perfect. So she said, share some of your duties that relate to capacity building for your service in the chat. And that's exactly what I wanted you to do now. I want to hear from you because I've given you a plethora of possibility in terms of capacity building, and it may or may not relate to you. You may or may not be doing any of the things that we just mentioned. And so Sophia, are you okay if I start kind of reading some of the ones that they've put in the chat as we go?
Yeah, please do. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead.
No, like I said, it's perfect. To me, that says we're aligned, and this is what it's wrapping it all together. It's pulling it all together. So Brian says he's been working to improve the ability to increase capacity through better equipment and resources. Yeah, absolutely. Better equipment and resources, definitely capacity building. Jennifer, new donor software. Yes, that helps you track donors. Make sure you continue to engage with them. Most excited about the texting software that allows you to message the case managers right away. Have a connect card on it, which is a form for the case manager to give out referrals. Regularly send out mass text messages to the volunteers without using a group text chat, which you are correct is annoying to everyone. I love it. You found a workaround. It feels like a personal text to each volunteer without actually being so, which is efficient, right? If I have to send a text to 25 different volunteers, it takes a lot of time. If I can send one message out, it's way more efficient. We can rock on. Makes the process smoother and quicker. Yep, fantastic. That exactly. Yes, planning, implementation, evaluation, that's all capacity building. Dawn, I didn't put it in my thing, but one of my original examples was creating a logic model for your program, and nobody wants to do that. But it's capacity building, right? Creating that logic model. Outreach for tutoring services. Yeah, coordinating meetings with other academic resources and students. That is capacity building, hands down, absolutely. Oh, yay, Susan, developing a volunteer recruitment plan and onboarding for volunteers. Phenomenal, huge task, but that's going to be wonderful once that's in place for that organization. That's wonderful, wonderful. Yes, Janae meets new residents and helps them sign up for the market, find out what other services they need to address senior food hunger, food insecurity, and connect them to those resources. That absolutely builds the capacity for who you're able to serve. Caitlin helps reach out to other English instructors at WT, spread the news about the program so they're aware of what's going on. Absolutely. Awareness is a critical component to capacity building. Donovan, tool maintenance and establishing checks to ensure maintenance. Oh, I love this. This is an often overlooked component. But yes, keeping expensive tools and vehicles working longer saves working time when the tools run right the first time and the entire time. Exactly akin to the laptop example. Yes, love it, Donovan. That's fantastic. Oh, we're going to keep going. I love it. I love it. I love it. This is fantastic. Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Working with a nonprofit advisor to help continue strengthen the organization. Yep. Continuously networking, always. Giving information to other organizations on how we can connect and help serve their clients. Yeah. All of that's capacity building. And I would say a lot of people do capacity building things not realizing that's what they're doing, right? They're just rocking along doing what they do, not recognizing the valuable impact that has in terms of the capacity for the nonprofit organization. So that is phenomenal, and I love it. That's all fantastic. And I hope now, after you've seen today, like you can kind of see where your capacity building fits in with the overall scheme, because I really am guessing that most AmeriCorps members are not involved in the overall umbrella picture, right? You're very targeted or narrowed in on one aspect of it, except of course Matt's not here today. I know Hannah, we were talking about that, right? Matt runs the entire nonprofit organization, so he probably is more involved in all of it, but most AmeriCorps volunteer members are really more narrow in what they're doing, whether it's volunteer recruitment or program delivery or evaluation or whatever that looks like. So feel free to keep sharing those out there, because I know Sophie and Hannah are probably going to look at that and see how you're building capacity at the organization. But if you haven't considered that, I really hope you have. Consider all the things you do and how they may be related to that capacity building. I think the thing I wanted to say about this, kind of as not an ending per se, but getting closer to the end, is if we go back to our visual where the mission is, again, the North Star, we have our programs that are really strong, and we have our management, government, business model, administration systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as all of our table legs. If you'll recall, I want to say it was at the beginning of our second session. A lot of questions came up in the first session about, like, how do you start a nonprofit? What does that look like? And that question of how do you start a nonprofit came up, and I said, please don't start a nonprofit. And that might sound, I know most people laugh at that, and it is kind of humorous, but the rationale behind that was, there's probably a nonprofit doing what you want to do, right? Their mission probably aligns with yours. And if you can partner with them or grow them or be with them, like, that helps. And I wanted to put that in context here with this. If you can imagine, if you're starting a nonprofit on your own, you're building every piece of this table, right? You're starting at the very beginning. You're creating every single table leg. You're creating every single tabletop piece. You know what I mean? You may have that mission at the front, but you're building it all. And that's a lot of work, and that's a lot to do. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of expertise, and it takes a lot. Whereas if there's an organization already doing what you're doing, or already doing what you want to do. Or similarly, if you can just come in and be a program, right, in their capacity, that's much easier, in my opinion. That's much smoother. That's much better because you're not trying to build that entire thing all by yourself. You're just fitting into another one and strengthening their ability to meet their mission. Does that make sense? So I wanted to make sure that visual was there because I just think it can be bad for me to tell people not to start nonprofits, but that's why, right? Like there's an easier way, and chances are there's a nonprofit doing what you're doing, and you can either be, I think I'm going to pick on Calvin again, even though he's not here anymore, right? If you're doing a community garden one place, why can't you have the governance and the management and the business model all be the same for this garden and this garden and this garden, right? Like if it's already in place, let's just use it and expand upon it and do more programs to meet that mission more effectively. Is that fair? Okay, so I am at the point in time where I would love to open it up and see if there are any questions. I know there haven't been so far, right? I haven't missed any in the chat or missed anybody trying to ask a question.
I don't see anything in the chat, so if you guys do have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself, unless you're really, really shy.
Yeah, put it in the chat, unmute, whatever. While we're waiting to see if a question comes in, I'm gonna go I had it earlier and now I don't have it anymore because I copied the other one. I'm gonna go get the correct link for the post quiz for today.
We did have someone ask if you specifically had any resources that can help with volunteer recruitment, Jessica.
Yes. So there's a couple things that I would tell you. I'm wondering if that person missed session 2.
They are new, yes.
Yeah. So at the end of session 2, we talked quite a bit. And again, so if you do not have the slides, let me know and I will send them. But we talked a bit at the end of section 2 about volunteers and where you can go to find volunteers and how to attract and keep volunteers. There was a resource from DonorBox. I also shared some of the ways, like United Way of Amarillo Canyon has a day of caring. Most rural United Ways have a day of caring too. There's Hands-On Amarillo, if you haven't heard of Hands-On Amarillo. And then I think, if I'm not wrong, the Council on Nonprofits, if you search Council on Nonprofits and volunteers, they probably have some templates or links to templates regarding like volunteer policies, recruitment ideas, plans, etc. So that'd be the couple places I would start you with.
Susan, I do have those slides from that last meeting Jessica has or did with us, so I can share those with you in the video, just depending on what you prefer. And then we also do have some other members who are doing volunteer recruitment or coordination that I can give you the contact info for if you'd like to visit with them and kind of pick their brains.
Yeah, Hands-On Amarillo is a good resource. So it connects organizations that have volunteer needs with volunteers who are looking for places to serve. So I'm glad it worked out and is working out well for Panhandle Orphan Care. That's great. Okay. Feel free to continue to ask questions if you have any. I'm not gathering there's a lot out there. You can always reach out to me and I'm happy to answer questions outside of this. I did put I think I'm going to test it before we go further. Yes, the post quiz link in the chat. So if you will, please, 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 we're going to take 2 or 3 minutes and make sure that's all it should take. Complete that for me. That would be phenomenal. And if you have more questions, again, let me know now. And Hannah and Sophia, if you're okay, giving everybody, 2 or 3 minutes to complete that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we can. I'm gonna fill it out too. So if everyone will finish that up, we'll have some final reminders as well. Um, and I don't know if I'm forgetting anything else, Hannah. Feel free to jump in if I am.
Um, no, I don't think so. Just keep an eye out on email, as these required meetings come up. Just want to reinforce that these are just part of being in AmeriCorps. The goal of these meetings is not to try and torture y'all for a couple hours. We really hope you get something out of these. Even if it's a couple pieces of things here and there that you can apply to your site. But then also just reminding y'all that AmeriCorps isn't just what we're doing locally, but we're part of an organization that is federal. Like this spans across the entire nation. And so think about the work that you're doing here. There are similar organizations across the nation that are helping their community in really meaningful and impactful ways as well. So I want to kind of bring us back to reminding everybody our individual organizations are great, but we're part of a larger one too. Have you gotten responses back in, Jessica,
I
from the
have.
group?
I was just checking. I've had six,
Perfect.
7 responses now, so we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
Awesome.
My contact information is on that screen. Like I said, happy to answer questions or um, later on that you have thoughts or anything like that. Woo, 13 responses. I think we're there, Hannah. We got it.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thanks, all for doing all that for her. That
Okay.
that honestly helps everybody. I know Jessica likes those, helps provide some really crucial information. So we definitely appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Then just these last reminders. Sorry, I was responding to somebody in the chat. Um, Last reminders, Mardi Gras event. You can email AmeriCorps at WT if you are interested in volunteering to help. This would be considered a service project. Remember, you're required to do a certain number, so this would count as one. Also, if you're behind a little bit on hours, or like I said, want to get ahead, this is a really great event to do that at because there's so many hours that you can catch up on just in that one day. We have reopened Teams. If you want to be part of that, that's optional, not required. But if you want to be part of that Teams group, please reach out. Let Sophia know. She's the one that really has set that up. For the February 3rd and 4th cohort, for those of you who are here, you should have gotten an email from me this morning with the required trainings. Just a reminder, I've given you about a month to get those completed. But if you have any questions or issues with them, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, that's for the new cohort. So for those of you who have been with us a while, don't worry about that.
That's it. Make sure you log your time. If you're new and you need help logging time, let us
Let
know.
me know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the site is WT AmeriCorps, and this is considered professional development and skills. I feel like I had something else I meant to bring up. I put Jessica's contact info in our chat as well if some of you all missed that, and you wanted to copy and paste that somewhere or take a picture of it, to reach out to her later. I guess if there's no final questions, we could wrap up. Make sure you finish that post presentation survey. And thank you so much, Jessica, for presenting to us. If y'all have questions, feel free to stick around. Hannah and I will stick back.